I am going to show you a hack of the Carnaby dress, and I'm going to make a Carnaby frill top. So I'm using the same pieces as the dress. So this is the back two pieces here. So I've cut the two back pieces as per the dress, but I've cut it shorter. So from the underarm point on the dress pattern, I've cut it to 30 centimetres. Now, you can do this whatever length you like, but this will come to kind of hip level on me. I think I'm 5'7". But take some measurements of yourself and then you can ascertain how long or short you'd like this. But I thought 30 centimetres was a good starting point. So the back yoke is the same, the two back pieces are the same, just shortened. The two facing pieces, as per the Carnaby dress, are exactly the same. So cut those the same as you do for the Carnaby dress. So that's the front facing there, and that's the back facing piece there. And then for the front pieces, you need to shorten that to the same length as your back piece, but remember to consider that the dart will bring that side line up. So if you pinch your dart out and then place your front piece next to your pre-cut back piece, make sure you get the right size so it's going around at the same level. I've cut my centre panel to the same length as the front section here, which the front section measures at 36 centimetres. So I've cut this strip around about 36 centimetres also. And then what we're going to do is create a frill that will be trapped in between the centre panel and the front pieces. So we're going to have a frill that's going to come out here, and I'm going to do that in the same fabric as the main body. So this is our Tropicana lilac cotton lawn, absolutely beautiful for this kind of top, really, really cool for the summer months. But you could wear it all year round for parties, etc., especially with the frill in it, it'd look beautiful. So for the front frill section, because I'm going to gather the edge of the frill up to create the frilled section, it needs to be longer than the length of this centre front here. So we measured that at 36 centimetres. So I've just done it in paper for now, and then I'll cut it out in fabric. I've cut out a length of paper at 75 centimetres. So it's roughly double the length of this bit here, so that when it creases up, when I've gathered it all up, it gives a really nice effect. And what I want to do is not have a raw edge on the frill, so I'm doubling over the fabric that I cut, and then that will also be trapped in that front seam. So I wanted my ruffle to be approximately 6 centimetres wide, so it would come to sort of that point there. But remember, you have to add your seam allowance. So 6 centimetre ruffle plus your 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, 7.5 centimetres. I'm doubling that because I don't want a raw edge on the edge. So the piece of pattern piece that I have cut is 15 centimetres wide by 75 centimetres long. And I'll go and cut that out in fabric now. So here we have our two gather pieces, our two ruffles, cut out, one for each side. The first thing I'm going to do, as per the Carnaby dress instructions, is do a stay stitch along the diagonal edge of the two front pieces and also the back yoke neck piece there. Now that the stay stitching is done on the diagonals and on the back yoke, it's time to pin and stitch the darts, the bust darts, into place. So I'm stitching the darts from the outside edge to the apex, and I'm going to stop the line of stitching about a stitch away from the apex. I'm not going to back stitch because that creates a little bit of bulk. And with this being really fine fabric, we don't want that point or that bulk, so we're just going to stop and then tie the ends off. So just stopping a stitch from the end, pull it away, cut, and then tie these ends off together. The darts are now stitched in place and I've ironed them down towards the bottom of the garment and flat. So they are finished with for now. Taking the frill strips, we're going to fold in half lengthways, right sides together, aligning up the raw edges. And then we're going to stitch using the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance each short end. So just stitching this short end here and the other short end. Now that those short edges are stitched, bevel each corner, so cut at 45-degree angle from the stitch line on each corner. This just reduces any bulk when we turn it through. So beveling the four corners there, and then turn through to the right side. So all the way through, and then press out flat so that it looks like this. So make sure that you align your raw edges and then you get a really nice flat piece. And then once that they're both ironed flat, we're going to run 2 rows of gathering stitches along the raw edge through both layers. So within your seam allowance, so I do 0.5 centimetres and 1 centimetre from the edge, 2 rows of gathering stitches. Now that the gather stitches are in place, we're going to take the 2 bottom threads and start to gather this edge just by gently pulling and easing the fabric down. I tend to do this, if it's a long piece like this, I tend to do this till I get to the centre point, and then I'll start and do the same thing from the other end. And the aim is that we get this piece to the same length, but just slightly shorter, the same length as the centre panel piece. Now, I've marked on this centre panel piece 1.5 centimetres from each edge, because we've got that as our seam allowance for the hem and for the top. We don't want to trap that frill into there. We want that to be free of the seam allowance. So I've gathered the length to 1.5 centimetres short of each end, so 3 centimetres essentially shorter than the centre piece. Once you're happy that you've got that length correct, tie off your ends of your gathered piece and then just redistribute your gather so they look nice and even. That's gathered beautifully and it's really nicely distributed. So taking one of your front pieces, mark down from this top end 1.5 centimetres, your seam allowance, mark up from the bottom 1.5 centimetres. And then taking your frill with the right side facing up that you want to see, just place that in between those 2 markers there. And then align those raw edges. Then on top of that, you want to take your centre strip piece and place it face down with the raw edges in alignment there. So all of the raw edges are equal there. So that when we've sewn that with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance all the way down, it's going to look a little something like that on one side. And then we'll repeat the same process for the other half of the front. The key to this process is to use a lot of pins down that edge and pop them in horizontally from the edge there, so you can walk over with your sewing machine. And also make sure that your raw edges are beautifully aligned on the edge as well. You've not caught anything underneath. And now I'm going to stitch down this line through all layers with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. So once stitched, you should have this effect. Now I'm going to overlock all of those layers there together, and then I will press all of the seam allowance probably towards the centre. That's the way it seems to want to go. And then we're going to repeat for the other side. So take the frill for the other side and place it face side up onto face side up of the front piece, and then taking the piece that we've already assembled with the frill attached, you want to put that face side down on top, so you're sandwiching everything together. I'm going to pin this edge here and then stitch again with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. And that is the front of the top completed. That's the ruffles either side there. So we can pop that to one side for the time being. The next thing we need to do is to get the two lower back pieces, and with right sides together, pin and stitch down the centre back seam, 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. So that's stitched. I've pressed the seams open and I finished each edge with an overlock stitch. So turn it back to the right side and take your back yoke piece, and with right sides together, line up those long raw edges there. Pin across there and stitch, and that will form the back piece. For this seam, I finished the seam allowances together and I've pressed the seams downwards. So I finished it with an overlocker, pressed the seams downwards, and that's the back finished. So now it's time to attach the front to the back at the shoulder seams. So right sides together, align your shoulder seams, pin and stitch with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance as before. The front and back pieces are now attached and I've pressed the shoulder seams open on both sides, so that can go to one side. Next up, we're on to the facings. So we are going to attach these first at the shoulder seams. So that's the front piece and the back piece